Welcome to Nordic Mythology podcast. I'm Daniel Farrand, owner of the company Horns of Odin, and I'm joined, as always, by Dr. Matthias Nordvig.
Hello, everybody. This time we're joined by Anders Johansen, who is known on his Instagram handle as Viking Blacksmith, and that's because he is the resident Viking blacksmith at Gudvangen in Norway. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
You brought your hammer.
Is that thing ever further than like a 3-meter radius from you at all times?
Never leave your hammer more than 3 feet away from you. You never know when the iron is gonna start attacking you. It depends on what you're. I'm actually literally what's it called? 5 meters, 5 yards, or whatever. This way, that way, is my smithy. So I'm actually sitting in my blacksmith apartment right here. So I pimped it up a little bit, but it's normally looks like this.
So we're actually talking with you while you're in the Viking Age.
Yeah, you might say that. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so where should we start? You had a question you wanted to ask.
Yeah,
first.
I have a question / a disclaimer. So because in Norway we have this stuff here. This is from Poland though, but I just want to let everyone know that if I start snorting this stuff here, it's actually tobacco. So don't get scared. It's not a white powder. So this stuff is actually, I got this from some Polish visitors when they were visiting the Viking market, and this is crushed up tobacco, which is it's been cured for it can be cured for years. So when the natives in America met the Europeans when they came there the first time, the first expedition actually brought with it, like 2 years later, they brought this stuff back to Europe. This is the first tobacco product that was introduced into Europe. This is called snuff. So I just wanted to let you know it's very popular in Norway, but it's more, this is dry snus, as we call it, and the normal one in Norway, Sweden, especially, and Finland, I think, is the one that's wet, that you put as a pouch under your lip. We call it snus. So yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be. I've seen whenever I'm in Scandinavia, it always seems that it's a very popular thing. Those little pouches that you pop under your lip, and it seems to be getting bigger. Here, I see them behind the counter now, and I think the brand is even called Nordic, the biggest one that we have over here.
Oh yeah. Over here, they sell Copenhagen snus.
Oh, okay.
On the prairie in America. So,
well, the Danish guys, the Danish people, they might be into this as well. I actually don't know because I know.
No. We Danes, we smoke like chimneys instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I started smoking again. I went to Denmark.
Yeah. You're Danish. I didn't catch that. Sorry. That's a good thing you stopped me before I said something about Danish people.
I'm used to it. Don't worry about it.
It's like a family in Scandinavia because we're like 3 countries, and we have our siblings, and then we have 2 cousins, which is Iceland and Finland, basically.
Yeah.
So and we tease each other, especially Norwegian people tease Swedish, and I think Swedish tease Norwegians. We're a bit more relaxed about the Danish, I think. So
yeah, that sounds about right. I mean,
and then the poor Finnish.
As a Dane, you can take a lot of shit when you go to Sweden, though.
I believe you. So I don't know if do you like salty licorice as well?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I never shut up about salty licorice. I love it.
Okay. Awesome. Because I had to warn you about this, but I already had my dosage of salty licorice. I actually had some salty licorice ice cream that's like filled with what's it called? Salmiak, ammonia.
Yes.
Oh wow.
Yes.
Scandinavians love licorice.
Yeah, we love licorice for some reason.
Let's talk about where it is you are. I don't know if you want to give us a little a little rundown. I'm sure you have a whole talk that you usually give.
Yeah. Sometimes I have VIP visitors, for example, and they want to just listen to me rant on about the Iron Age and Viking Age blacksmithing and iron processing and stuff like that. So you have to just stop me if I rant for too long, and just ask me questions if you have any along the way.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I can tell you how they made iron in the Viking Age. That's a good place to start, I think.
Oh, I would say before we get into blacksmithing in general, I wanted to know about the place as a whole. I saw it called Viking Valley, or what's it actually called?
Yeah. I kind of tricked myself a little bit because I live here, so it's like everybody knows this place. Kind of, you have this local thing that normally you think everybody knows already. So yeah, of course. I'll tell you a little bit about the place. So about 20 years ago, or thereabouts, the chieftain, who is called Georg, he and the woman who owns the hotel with her husband on the other side of the river here, they sat over at the hotel and they looked at this big grassy area.
Mm-hmm.
They said, wouldn't it be perfect to have a Viking village over there? So,
as you do
as you do normally. And so he has his own story. So I won't tell his story. It's a long story as well, but they eventually managed to get their dream to come true.
Mm-hmm.
And so first they had there's so many. I started working here 2018, and there's so many stories before I started working here about how crazy this place was before I started working here. So I'm half happy, half regretful that I didn't discover this place before.
Okay.
So it's like there's a game, for example, called Knattleiker, which is a game that is played in the Viking Age. They played this by. There's one tale. I think this is in Grettir Saga. I think. Grettir Saga. One of the Icelandic sagas. Grettir and some of his family and friends are playing Knattleiker. There's 2 versus 2 on an icy field, and they have some kind of goal on each side of the court, and they have a ball that's been made from birch bark, so it's been soaked and twisted into a very hard, sharp ball. And so
sounds safe.
So when Grettir gets angry, so he smacks a ball so that it flies into his brother's face, I think it is, and he gets a cut in his forehead, which is one of the first sign that they saw that Grettir was really strong, because this other guy was really, really strong. He was seen as being really strong, and so that's the first of. I love Grettir Saga, by the way, as you probably understand by now.
Yeah.
So they play this by anyone who has the ball is free for all. You can do whatever you want to them. You can beat them, or you can kick them, or strangle them, or whatever. It doesn't matter. There are no rules, right? So and when you have the ball, and in order to make a goal, then you have to smack the ball with your bat, so that it hits the goal on the other side, right? Yeah, like the movie in the Northman, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that's where I saw it.
I can share my opinion about the movie later, but so we have this court here that we play Knattleiker, right? And there we had some Russian school kids, I don't know, they were like 12 years old. This is a second-hand story, by the way, so I didn't experience this myself, but this is the type of thing that I was told later. And so they hadn't done so much investigation into how Knattleiker was supposed to be played, so they didn't have any rules for this. So what they didn't know is that Russian school kids are apparently highly competitive. So they didn't care about any rules at all. And so they ended up with beating each other with the baseball bats.
Oh no!
So that's when they. So it's kind of kind of same thing as we had some Russian fighters as well. We asked them also if they had any rules for engagement with reenactment weapons, because you have these steel weapons and everything. And then the comment on that is, if he's unconscious, don't hit him so much.
So much as well. No.
So we had some stories like that. But when I started working here, the village was already built. So they built it in 2017 during that year.
Mm-hmm.
And the site that the village is built on is not a historical site. So it hasn't been a Viking village here before or anything like that. But the area goes back all the way to the Stone Age, because you have something called Veidevegg, Veide wall, or hunting wall in the mountains up here. Typical for the Stone Age, because they built these stone walls up in the mountains to guide reindeer out to run over the cliffs of a mountain. And this is signs of settlement, or like activity here, at least in this area, in the Stone Age. Then you have the Bronze Age, which is you have several finds from the Bronze Age, and you have several mounds, grave mounds from the Bronze Age. And you have Viking Age finds as well. So there is Viking Age history from this area as well.
I mean, it sounds like a very cool place. I don't want to go into too much of the creating of the village, but it sounds I guess they try to do everything as accurate as possible.
Yeah. We had some criticism a few years back, because someone went into the village and they actually looked at it from outside, and they thought it looked too modern with plain walls and like straight walls and everything. The thing about that is that the village was built by, we had two project managers for building the village, and one of them was a historian and the other one was an archaeologist, I think. I think they're both Danish, if I don't remember wrong. Don't quote me on that, but they did everything by the book as far as they know how to do that. So
they built it too well, though.
Huh?
They built it too well.
Too well, yeah. So
too straight.
Obviously, yeah, exactly, yeah. So obviously they were able to make straight planks. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to make ships. You know, it just takes a little bit longer. So, and judging from the Mestemyr find in Sweden, it's a finding of a tool chest from the Viking Age that's been lost on a lake in Sweden. This lake became a marsh and eventually a field that a farmer plowed. So he discovered this. What's it called? Cache, or like this huge find of many tools, hundreds of tools from the Viking Age. So. And you have planes, and you have chisels, you have files. Obviously, with the pattern of the file has been eroded away because it's small iron. So it's a massive find, and it's very fascinating in my opinion. So
yeah,
obviously they did have the tools, and they did have the techniques to do that. So we have imagined this village to be very rich place, like a wealthy Kaupang kind of, which is like a shopping place that has a harbor that the ships can come in and they can have trading. So we imagine that, okay, everyone in this area is probably going to be rich, because we do have a local, what do you call that? A woman from the sagas called Aud the Wise is local from here, the next valley over from here. Her family was a very big family, which eventually married into the Scottish royal family. So it's in the Viking Age, this area was really rich and really well known. So
Mhm.
so yeah.
I mean, so when someone complained that the walls were too straight, I guess I don't know how would we know that they weren't straight in
Exactly,
the
yeah.
Viking Age? I guess surely they would have built them straight, but like anything with wood, especially over 1,000 years, anything
Yeah,
you're going to find is it's going to have warped and twisted and changed, and
exactly.
especially when it's gone to ruin as well.
It's about common sense, I think, as well. So I agree with you. So how would you know? So most of it is up to conjecture on this count, because we don't really know how they would have looked, these houses. We do know that we imagined the roofs of houses to be shaped like boats or ships, until we found an example of a straight beam in Denmark, I think. So most of the houses that we look at as very classical long houses with boat-shaped roofs seems to be, maybe it can be the rule, and then there's an exception of a straight beam that makes the roof happen straight. But there's also tales from the sagas that talk about, well, Njol's saga, I think, has a tale about they were shooting out from the scot, or from the small openings on the underneath the ceiling inside the house, which indicates that these houses had a straight roof, low roof, with the windows on top of these.
Actually,
on the
the houses with the convex roofs and walls as well, they are very closely linked to the Trelleborg fortresses that are being built in the Harald Bluetooth in Denmark. And they do seem to spread from there, so like become like a thing. But I don't think that they were, common, like as just like the houses that people would build, because we do also see the more sort of straight houses present across Scandinavia. I think those like typical Viking houses, right? They're probably more associated with the upper class. Like it's an elite building style, if anything.
Yeah. I think you're right. It seems like that as well. And
Okay,
sorry, go on.
No, you go.
Okay. No, it just occurs to me that we have something called lofting in Norway. They also have this in Latvia, I know. This is a common building technique. It means that you put seen from above, you put one beam, like one log here, and then log there, and then a log there, and a log there. So it's a log house. It's what it's called in English, huh?
Yeah, like a log cabin type
log
thing.
Cabin, yeah. And we don't have any examples of log cabins from the Viking Age, naturally, because the reason why the stave churches have been preserved is because they are built in the way that you have a beam which is already naturally impregnated because of its resin inside. They would when a child was born, this is the myth that I've heard, at least. I don't quote me on this, because as far as I know, my sources are made the fuck up, So that's why it's like that. I love when people ask me what my sources are for things, because that's my primary answer. So it's like, okay,
but that's kind of beautiful. It's kind of beautiful in its own sense. That's how things were passed around originally. In the Viking Age, things would have been passed around orally, and they would maybe change a little bit here and there. So it's quite beautiful that's how you then remember the things you pass on. And fuck it might not be 100% accurate, but it makes for a good story.
Exactly, yeah. I think the only exception to that actually is like skaldic poetry, because it's so extremely complex and complicated. I haven't even looked at it closely yet, but I know it's like they call skaldic poetry haiku from hell, and this is one of the reasons why I believe, Snorri, when he started preserving skaldic poetry, he did it because he was fond of
the Norwegian king. He was
Henning.
fond of the Norwegian king.
Yeah, that's what he was actually. Yeah. But his excuse was like, we need to preserve this, you know. And as far as we know, it's as far as I understand, it's so complicated to make a skaldic poem that you can't really start changing things around in it, so that it's most likely pretty accurately how it used to be in the first place.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I guess that'd kind of be similar to with a song. Any song today, it has a melody and a rhythm. You kind of would remember that.
Yeah, well, the thing is with skaldic poetry that it is alliterative, right? So if you start moving around, and it's very tight. If you start moving around on the with like words and stuff like that, then you get an entirely different meaning sometimes. Yeah. Whereas with a song, you can like forget a word or make up another word, as long as it rhymes and follows. Yeah. So yeah, it's supposed to be very historically accurate. Okay, of course, all the sagas are like, yeah, this was composed by this and that dude in 800 and something. It's like, yeah. How do you know that, dude?
Yeah, because historians are made the fuck up,
Made the fuck up. That's it. So, okay, you're gonna have to go back and tell us about the impregnated log, because otherwise people are going to be furious that you got halfway through a story and then stopped.
Sorry about that. So, apparently, when a child was born in the old days in Norway, then the farmer who had the child would be going out in the forest, cutting down branches on pine tree all the way to the top, so that you have like a small Christmas tree at the top, like maybe a meter of green on the top. Mm-hmm. And then by the time the child was of marriage age, which would be like in the 1800s, probably like 15, because that's like our confirmation age, and then everyone. I think parents in the old days were like, yeah, we fed you enough now, so get out of our house. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You can fend for yourself now. So they started pretty early, but that was just enough time to for the resin to soak up into the tree. So when you cut the tree, it's naturally impregnated, so it doesn't actually wither so quickly. Then you have tar as well on top of that. So when they made the stave churches, for example, this was practiced so that you have this naturally wear-resistant wood that you put it into the ground, but before you put it into the ground, you fill the hole with large rocks so that it has air and drainage. So, and when you put the log in, then you put the stones into that hole as well, so that it's not going to rot away on the base like other houses would do. So that's one of the reasons why stave churches still exist today, because that building technique is really, really good. And as long as they're being maintained, it's really, really, it would be difficult for it to deteriorate.
So. It's so fascinating that they would have known, because they've not done that by chance. It's done for a reason, and that's so interesting.
All there, I would say. So, so about the houses in the Viking Age as well, we have post holes, so that this technique seemed to have occurred around the time when they started making the churches. I don't know this for a fact, but it seems like that to me, because I believe that otherwise you would have houses that would be in the possession of rich, great families, and they would want to keep their houses. And I don't think that most people would come to a really large, great-looking house and then be like, just tear it down. Doesn't matter, I don't think that would be logical for people to do. No. So they would try to preserve it if it was a great, nice-looking house. So I think when it comes to the longhouses, for example, we have post holes. That is an indication because the wood will rot in the ground. Then we have post holes, which indicate where the posts were located, where the doors maybe were located. Mm-hmm. And we also have, now talking about like blacksmithing, We also have scales, oxidation in the inside longhouses, like the one in Borg in Lofoten. There's a place inside, if I don't remember wrong in this case, there is a place inside where the forge was, because you can see the scales, because the scales are already oxidated, so it doesn't actually rust after that. It's already rusted in fast forward in a way.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. Yeah, it seems like you were talking about with the flat roofs. Matthias, you might know better whether this is true or not, but it feels like when something is found in kind of from the Viking Age, that it automatically is. So I mean, certainly, I don't know whether it's the same with scholars, but with like the average Joe, if there's one thing that exists, everybody then goes, "That's how everything must have been."
Yeah.
So like if there's one, if there's one sword found, it's then every sword looked exactly like this one. That feels, and I don't know if that's the scholarly perspective as well, Matthias.
Yeah, I mean, you like, for instance, with women's dresses, like Anders, you know this as a reenactor, right? Like all women, they wear the same dress, right? And it's based off of like one or two patterns that have been found, more or less.
It's almost like there was no creativity.
Yeah.
There can be only one.
There can be only one. And it's of course, the balancing, when you do reenactment, you're balancing between like, well, what is historically accurate and how creative can we be, right?
Yeah.
And so, and you also find different locations when it comes to Scandinavia. Like you find different locations with different rules. Some are more hardline, some are less hardline, and all of that stuff, right? So
exactly.
But the main principle is, of course, to go with like, what did we know existed, and then try to reproduce that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, that was also my point earlier that I actually forgot to say as well about the houses, is that I take a long time to get to the point, actually.
It's all right.
Yeah, we could go around. What's
the saying? Walking around the porridge? Is that what Norwegians
say? Walking around the porridge. Yeah. Yeah.
The Danish version is the cat is walking around the porridge.
Yeah. The Norwegians probably just copied it from the Danish, and then we just cut it down a little bit. Like, it's too long.
Make it more efficient.
No, I think Elisa said that the full Norwegian one is cat walks around the porridge.
Yeah, I think
they shortened it down.
Yeah, it's probably just shortened down. Many things are like that in Norwegian language. But anyway, I was keeping on track because so in the eastern part of Norway, we have log houses from the 1800s, 1700s, way back in time. And most of the houses from the eastern part of Norway, unless it's a food storage house, which is called a stabbur, unless it's like that, it's normally rounded logs. It's not done any effort. It's not made any effort to make this planks or like make these logs straight on the sides. But in the western part of Norway, the Lofte tradition is very, very different, because they do make an effort of making the sides of the house straight. So, and I asked a guy who does this type of work, and I said, why is that? Why is this why did they do it differently in the eastern part of Norway and the western part of Norway? And his answer is very simple. It rains a lot more in the western part of Norway. So that in the eastern part of Norway, it doesn't matter if the water runs around the log and then gets into the cracks, because it doesn't rain so much that it's going to be damaging to the structure itself. But in the western part of Norway, it's so much rain that if you have this round, it's just going to run in and it's going to drip into the house and rot from the inside. And it makes perfect sense when you see it that way, which also would explain a lot about Viking houses being for example, in Iceland, you have peat houses from the bog peat, which is completely different from the houses that would be in Norway. So maybe you have some houses in Norway. Which have you played Valheim, by the way? I play Valheim. I'm a computer.
I haven't, but I've heard lots about it. You mean you have computers in the Viking Age?
I mean, no. What is a computer? I don't know how I can see you guys right now.
It must be mine. This must be blowing your mind right now.
That's the best. That's the best. When I'm on Instagram, then I get an inbox message. Like, I never got a specific one like this, but it's indications kind of like this. Well, do you guys really have technology? It's like, are you living only as a Viking? And it's like, yes, I do have this phone that I take all these pictures on Instagram with. It's kind of obvious, but I think I'm doing my job very well when it comes to the publicity part of it, because if it's immersive, then obviously if it is that strong an image that people are like, oh, I didn't make that connection that you actually had a phone, that's a good sign, I think.
You're definitely doing something right. I mean, how many followers do you have? 110,000?
Now I have 133,000.
So you must have more than the actual village itself.
Yeah. I have three times as much followers as the village official.
Wow.
So that's fun, actually. So I met a freeman up here once, and you might know her, Draugaskald. I think she's been on your podcast before. She's called Odin Scrotum.
She did. That's one of my favorite episodes we've ever done.
She's a lot of fun. And the thing is, I didn't know anything about like skaldic poetry and stuff like that, and she was into that. So I was like, oh, this is really fascinating. And she also had like 10,000 followers at that time. So I was like, what? Is it possible to have like 10,000 followers? That's incredible, right? So I was like, okay, maybe I can try to do. So I started an Instagram called Viking Blacksmith, and I just worked on it, and I picked up some tips and tricks from her first, and then other people along the way. And it's fantastic how much just sharing information with people how far it can get you, because some inspiration from here and there, and then before you know it, you have some luck along the way as well. The reason why I have so many followers now is because I did get I got to 10,000, I think. Something happened with the algorithm after that, and then a travel company called like Heaven of Travel or something. It has like 2.5 million followers, and they picked up my picture and they posted it on their story. So during one week or something, this one post got like 1.5 million views. So that's how it kind of went viral for me. But as a friend of mine explained to me, that if your profile doesn't have quality content, you're not gonna get followers. No matter how many people come in to see your profile, you're not gonna have the followers unless you have the content from before. So that's what I've been working on. So it's a lot of hard work, but it's also one stroke of luck after I got that tip of making quality.
Hey man, I've built a 5,000 Instagram following just by being a fucking weirdo. So you could also do that.
For sure.
Yeah. And it's like, Mr. Beast on YouTube.
Oh, Mr. Beast.
What did he do to get all those followers? Well, what he did was that he did anything he could to get more followers. So he had like things that he did. I don't remember what it was even. It was like, I will eat 100 of this item or something. So weird stuff like that. So, and that's the type of thing that people will be like, what? He's going to eat all that?
You got to play the game, Matthias. By the way, you look like you'd never heard of Mr. Beast before.
I have not heard of Mr. Beast.
This guy has made so much money now that he just gives it away. And at Halloween, he just was giving out iPhones. The kids were going to his door and he was just giving away iPhones, Macs. I wanted to go and dress up as a little kid and try and get one.
So where does this dude reside?
I don't know, but I wish I knew.
Can I find him? I need some money, bro.
But
I have
Anders,
this great Viking project.
Yeah. I can't believe that you got the handle Viking Blacksmith. I can't even get my own fucking name. I'm Daniel underscore Iron 1 because someone got it. And you managed to get Viking Blacksmith.
I was a stroke of luck that too as well. I was like, when I first discovered that name was available, I was like, what? Is that available? That is amazing. So because I would have thought that, but I thought to myself, I'll just try to type it in and see, does it work? If it doesn't work, then I'll find another name. But I'm also a gamer, so I want to. I'm gonna do. Maybe call me weird, but I'm gonna I'm gonna keep doing my Viking Blacksmith thing on Instagram, taking pictures of my daily life up here. But I'm also gonna do some other side projects. Like I want to have one gaming channel, which is gonna be Viking Smith, probably on YouTube.
It's probably available for you.
Yeah, I do have Viking Blacksmith on YouTube as well. I secured that actually. So,
yeah, good move.
Yeah, but the games, like I play Fortnite sometimes, and I play like World of Warcraft. All these very time-consuming games. That's like, 6 hours went by. Okay, it's morning again. So tonight I'm going to bed at 9, definitely, and then 2 o'clock. It's okay. Yeah. So
I'd never played Fortnite before until Alyssa introduced me to it, and now I'm fucking hooked. It's so addictive.
It's a really cool game, and they actually, just when I started playing that, they took away. They had this trial period where they took away building altogether. Then they brought it back, but then they separated it into 2. So now you can have no build, and then you can have building. And this building stuff, I'm too old for that, man. It's like my reflexes are probably not as good as when I was younger, but it's like I can still sit in a bush and snipe someone.
I've never played build. I just got told don't even fuck with build. It's all like 12-year-old kids that just
they just kind of like they build a building and edit doors and windows. It's insane. It's insane, man. I can't understand.
Mateus is so confused right now.
Yeah.
I feel so old right now.
You think Fortnite's every 2 weeks, don't you?
I don't even know what you're talking about, man.
Okay, let's talk about. We have to talk about blacksmithing. Let's talk about blacksmithing.
Talk about blacksmithing now. One big digression.
I know we're about 40 minutes in, and let's get back to the question.
Let me tell you a little bit about how to make iron in the Viking Age. So I have some nails here, and these nails, here they are. These nails are unlikely that Vikings would use for like decoration or doing stuff like that. But to make iron in the Viking Age, it's a huge operation, because let's say that by my calculations, the Oseberg ship, well, not by my calculations, but the Oseberg ship has 3,000.
Take credit for it. You take credit.
Yeah, my calculation is that actually the Oseberg ship has 3,000 nails, and to make the iron for that is somewhere for one person is somewhere between 100 and 250 years of work. So, and this is because you can make enough iron to make maybe a hammerhead or a knife and an axe, for example, in 1 month. That's approximately the amount of iron that you can. It varies very much, because you never know how much ore is in the bog peat that you bring out, but or how much iron is actually in the ore that you get out. But there are ways of making iron, so I can take you through that real quick. I literally have no idea. I've always wondered how you get the metal from the. Is it in the rock? Yeah, no. Actually, I'll show you. Hang on a second.
Because
It's
I know.
it's in the ground, in the bog.
Okay, but is it part of a stone?
We have two things here. Here is bog peat.
Okay.
I dug this out from the bogs in the spring. So right when the snow was melting, there was a lot of red snow and red dirt up in the mountain. It's easy to see it in the spring because you can see the red snow everywhere.
Mhm.
That's an indication that there's iron in the ground, right? So
Oh,
there's
wow.
two ways of seeing iron in the ground. It's either it's oil film on the water, or you have red snow or red patches of dirt. So
That's different from yellow snow.
that's different from yellow snow. You
The
can
kind that
eat
you
the red snow, but you shouldn't eat the yellow one.
exactly.
So look for the red, not the yellow.
So so by digging out that, I just dug out the whole red patches of dirt because there is small granules of iron ore in there. So that when you burn this on a fire, then you will end up with this dust that's iron ore dust, and it's been roasted, so it's now magnetic as well. And yeah, run to the doctor, the doctor. And so okay, so staying on track for that story about the iron. So yeah, oil film on the water or red snow. Then you, if it's oil film on the water, you can split the peat and then see if there's. It looks kind of like this stuff, although this is a bloom, which is a finished product. Really, it looks kind of like this.
So is that soil with like little bits of iron just kind of speckled in there?
No, this one is actually the finished product of iron bloomery process, which is I can tell you all about it now. It's like it's really so what you do is there is iron in the mountains, right? Inside iron in the mountains because a few million years ago or billion years ago, depending on where you are, there was a meteorite shower that hit the earth. That was mostly iron. So a lot of the earth's crust contains iron. And so when rain comes down on the mountain, it dissolves the iron from the inside. Then it runs out into the bogs, for example. And there's a certain bacteria that we just call iron bacteria that actually makes iron ore out of this. And iron ore technically is iron and oxygen bound together. So this bacteria uses this in its life process, and it adds tiny amounts of like sulfur and phosphorus and certain types of minerals, in addition to connecting iron and oxygen. So in order to separate that, to get iron out of that, you need to have an oxygen-free environment. And that's where charcoal comes in. So you take this and you take an oven that you can make it from clay or different ways of making it. You can also make it from the bog peat, which is the silt layer beneath the grassy layer. That can be quite dense. And in Iceland, they use this to stack together to make ovens. Okay. And then you have bellows, which you pump. And there's many different types of ways to do this and different bellows to use for this. But if you use those that we normally use today from medieval markets, for example, that's a double bellows, which you pump. And you pump it so that you take charcoal, iron ore, charcoal, iron ore, alternating layers all the way to the top. And then you light it on fire, pump it so that it has approximately 1,650 degrees Fahrenheit Celsius. It has to have 1,643 degrees Celsius in order for it to actually melt iron, I believe. So, and it holds approximately that temperature but not to melt the iron itself. Actually, this is only to liberate the iron away from the oxygen, because the oxygen will burn away, because this now is a carbon monoxide atmosphere inside the oven. So some of the iron will have small amounts of carbon attached to it. Some of the iron will just become iron. So when this bloom, when you end up with this, this contains some steel and some iron, because steel is iron with carbon attached to it.
Okay.
So in order to get this, to find out what is steel and what is iron from this lump of bloom, you have to work it. So one of the reasons why they call it wrought iron is because wrought iron means literally worked iron. And so you take this out when it's white hot, and then you strike it with wooden hammers, because it's very brittle. So you strike it and forge it out, and then you cut it, and then you fold it over, and then you weld it back together on high heat, and then into the oven, out of the oven all the time. So you weld it back together. You do this just like a piece of dough, you know. So you just fold it over and fold it over and fold it over. And at the end of this, you have squeezed out most of the impurities, which is the sulfur and the phosphorus and all this stuff. So then you end up with a piece where you strike this piece as flat as you can, and then you heat it up and put it into water. That will harden the pieces that now is steel, and it will just do nothing to the pieces which are now iron. So, and then you strike it with a hammer, because hardened iron, now hardened steel, just after it's been hardened, acts kind of like hardened glass. So it's very easy to crack it, and it will split off. And then the pieces which are now steel will have sharp, straight edges. And the pieces which is iron is more rugged, uneven edges. And then you take the steel in one pile and then the iron in one pile, so that when you make an axe, for example, you just make iron on each side, and then the middle, it will be steel. So
wait. Okay.
This is why the Vikings started buying swords from Francia instead. They were like, fuck this. These guys, they did the work already.
But people 1,000 years ago understood this. Obviously, they didn't study it on like a chemical level of knowing all the different compounds, but they understood that even when you were just saying having to go charcoal, like iron, charcoal, oil, iron.
Yeah.
Like just even understanding the complexity of that blows my mind.
It seems to have been a very secretive profession, really. So, and the thing is, the Vikings were pretty much experts at this, because, well, the definition of an Iron Age is the ability to mass produce carbon steel. It's like not just to make iron randomly, but mass production of carbon steel. Unless you can find evidence after the production being made, then that you're not, the archaeologists don't say that this area is in the Iron Age. So the Iron Age starts at 500 BC in Norway, which is one of the latest areas to start the Iron Age, but it's still 1,300 years before the Viking Age. So by the time the Viking Age, they had 1,300 years of experience by mass production of carbon steel. Yeah. So no wonder when I was looking at the Oseberg tripod, for example, I went to the museum in Oslo when it was still open, and I was studying it and seeing, okay, how does it actually look? How many times do they twist this, right? To make these twists on the, if you know what I mean, like the fire tripod to hang kettles from, for example.
Yeah, so for anybody listening, that's it. It is just a tripod of 3 metal spikes, I guess, that join together at the top, and you can then hang kettles or pots over a fire to boil water or whatever, cook food.
And if you've ever been to a Viking market, you've seen it, because
you will
that is the blueprint for the ones that everybody's using at Viking markets.
Yeah, this is like the what they call it, the generic tripod. But one thing that I did notice in the museum is that when we go to buy iron today, as a modern blacksmith, I obviously, from the story about making iron, I obviously don't make my own iron when I'm forging things out in front of an audience, because I would never be here. I would never be forging. I would just be out in the mountain digging for iron. And I didn't even tell you about the making of charcoal, because the charcoal would be like, you have to chop down a lot of trees, and then you have to dig a huge pit in the ground, and you have to put the trees in there, cover it with dirt after you obviously chop up the trees a little bit. Then you light it on fire for a couple of months, and you have to watch it for a couple of months to make this. And if you do anything wrong, it's going to just burn itself to the cinders. So,
so do you think that they learn just? Because for me, looking back, I was like, how the fuck did they know this? Like, how
Daniel is comparing his own lifespan to like the lifespans of like generations of people, or thousands and thousands of years, and he's like, how could they come up with this?
That's it. I think I'm looking at it through like modern eyes of just like, how the fuck is this? Is it just a case of that it was slowly discovered over like
trial and error over
tiny
generations?
little it's
well, let's say that you have Pharaoh, right? In the tomb of Tutankhamun, they have found an iron dagger. This is a meteorite iron dagger. So this is way into the Bronze Age. This is way long before the iron was being long before they discovered how to produce iron, right? So let's say that you see a meteorite coming down from the sky, and then Pharaoh says, "Hey, soldiers, go out and look for that. Send an emissary, because this is Ra coming down from the sky, right?" And so he sends out soldiers, and among the soldiers, there's always an idiot, right? So there's gonna be bound to be one idiot among the soldiers. So he takes his sword and cuts into this. Oh, it's just a stone falling down from the sky, right? So I just chop my sword into this, and he makes a notch into this warm piece. And his officers tell him, what the hell are you doing? Go and sleep it off or something. And then the next day they bring this stone back to Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh is like, okay, but it has a notch in it. What's this stuff, right? And the officer calls his soldier and he says, do what you did yesterday. And he takes his bronze sword, cuts into the piece, and the whole bronze sword just crumbles into mush, right? So maybe Pharaoh, if he is like any other person, he just wants more, because humans want more all the time. That's why we are where we are right now. So he says to the soldiers, okay, or to anyone, right? There's a bounty on getting these items. So didn't we see a meteorite falling down there last year? And then a few years ago, it was over there. Eventually, when they start looking for these meteorites, because he obviously they had the ability to forge bronze at this point. They had heating, and they had the ability to make things like these, for example, right?
So is bronze much easier to make than iron?
Bronze is just tin and copper mixed together, and these were found in the surface areas. Okay. So, and it doesn't take very much magic to kind of to melt that to make these into two things. Okay. So they send people out, and they start discovering that, okay, where that meteorite there fell down, there's oil film on the water. Okay, so they start looking for oil film, and eventually they come across places where that doesn't have meteorites, but it has iron ore. So they start burning it and start checking out, okay, how much do we need to burn it? Because we did burn the last one, didn't we? And then eventually they figure out a way to make iron. That's my take on how this might have happened. I never heard it from somewhere, but I've been thinking.
It makes sense. I mean,
it makes sense. Not necessarily the Pharaoh, but maybe some Sumerian, or like I think the Iron Age started originally in like Mesopotamia, that area. So
it's so fascinating to me that people knew how to do that, because if everybody in history was like me, and all our ancestors were like me, I promise you, we're not making it to the Iron Age. Because it's just not happening. I'm not figuring that out. I'm not figuring it out. We're just sat there with sticks and stones and maybe a fire at best. We're probably just all cold.
we would be. I think if we deleted all the technology right now, we would be fucked. Basically, it's just yeah. We just hope we would have to hope that fate would pull our hair at the same time because we'd be fucked. You know.
But that's why we would need people like you. If all like this,
I have a vision of like a tribe of Dans.
Oh fucking hell!
Sitting in the rain with like a stick trying to make fire.
Oh yeah, and everyone around us has flying cars. Every little tribe is flying around, buzzing around. And the other thing is, the tribe of Dans is so fucking stubborn that we're not asking anybody else for help. We're not asking for help. We're not like borrowing technology. We're just on our own, and we're not figuring it out.
We need a resident artist to make an image of the tribe of Dan.
all the flying cars, and then me just sat in the middle, just like. Because I wouldn't ask anybody either. I wouldn't be like, "Hey, please, can you help me out?" And everybody's like zooming around in their little fucking hover cars. I'm just sat there like, "I'll get there," and I'm rubbing my little stick together, trying to make the fire.
It's just gonna take a little bit more time. It's like,
yeah, I'll catch up. But, I often think about this. If all not, because we store so much knowledge on computers now. We have everything is stored on hard drives, on computers, on servers here and there. Like if all that disappeared,
yeah,
would be, and you really got put back to the basics. Like nothing that you think of, that you think matters now would matter, and you would rely on people like you who remember these old ways of doing things.
Yeah.
You become a god overnight.
I think I would have increased my my current Instagram status by 1 million.
Oh yeah.
Like, except Instagram wouldn't exist, but
until all the phone batteries died.
Don't kill that guy. Don't kill him.
Yeah, he actually knows stuff.
As I say, it would be very expensive to kill a blacksmith in the Viking Age as well. So, but I have to say, I was looking into, because I'm a type of person that I go all the way into knowledge if I can. So I did some additional research. I know some things already about like Mjolnir, because we were talking about the hammer of Thor, right? Mm-hmm. And what I found was very interesting, because the hammer is technology. It's like probably put next to fire, which is blacksmithing in its essence. I think that the hammer is the most significant invention that's ever been made, because I think it was like about 3 million years ago, apparently, people started using stones to crush things, right? And about 30,000 years ago, we started putting handles on hammers, and which makes it vastly improved. So, and I was looking into this, which was very, very interesting to me, because in Latin, malleus is hammer, right? And Mjolnir is related to that word. But there's also a different name for it. And probably because this word has originated, it means to crush something, apparently, like Proto-Indo-European language way, way back. Mjolnir is related to lightning. The word Mejalandar or something like that. So it's related to lightning, which is logical to me as a blacksmith, because whenever I heat up something, and it doesn't need to be heated all the way to 1,000 degrees. It can be 700 degrees. If I strike that warm piece of steel hard enough, it's going to make sparks. Mm-hmm. So striking something.
It's easy to make that connection between lightning
so there's like 2 words for hammer, and one of them is hamar, which is hammer, where hammer comes from, which is a different word from Mjolnir, but they're both related in the sense that they mean to crush things, and is related to lightning. Mm-hmm. So It was very
Oh.
interesting. I'm gonna check more around that because it was. Obviously as a blacksmith, it's practical to know where the word hammer comes from and where Mjolnir comes from.
Yeah.
So
it sounds as though iron is obviously very important, and is iron the hardest thing that they could make at the time? I guess for making
steel
hammers
would be the hardest thing.
Oh, so steel. Okay.
Yeah.
So when it came to jewelry, and like you said with the amulet of the Mjolnir, would they then use bronze or less toughened things?
Yeah. They had these. Actually, this summer I had a friend from Poland who is a master jeweler, and he's also a complete history nerd, especially in the Viking Age and the migration period, right? So I talked to him about this, and he gave me a lot of information about this, and so many of the things that I say now come like directly from conversations with him. We're gonna have a project together, and it's not this helmet here, but we're gonna make a copy of the Valskjad helmet eventually.
Oh, nice.
It has bronze fittings and stuff like that. And the advantage of bronze, brass, tin, silver, and gold is that it's easy to cast it. But in order to cast, for example, steel or iron, you need to heat it to 2,200 Celsius, which is beyond their capacity in the Viking Age, because you need special ovens like blast furnaces. So in the 1600s, they started melting iron. That was like the first time that they started doing that, as far as we know, at least. So they made these, for example, many of this type of amulets, they're not complete on the backside. It's not like that.
I often wondered that.
Yeah, it's actually, when it's made of gold or silver, it's normally they've used a matrix. A matrix is something that you can, like, for example, if you're making a coin, you're using a matrix. So you're using some one above and one below, and then the workpiece in the middle, and then you smash it with a hammer, and it's gonna make the shape that you want. So most of these are apparently made as these templates, and then been made in a matrix to have that the pattern, and then some of them has also been made into filigree. So they have these tiny pieces. This is the Skåne amulet, and the Skåne amulet, if you look that up and you look at the level of detail on that workpiece, it's just, it doesn't make any sense even, because when you magnify it, you see that okay, so you have I don't know if you can see properly on this one, but you see these twirls on the hammerhead, right? Then you see small granules that's very hinted at, because this is a very raw copy that I made. But you have these small granules that you can't even see on this. But so all along the side of this, there's they're approximately the size of a needle, like the thickness of a needle. But they're not only that thickness, they're also hollow, and they have grooves on them, made from silver. So it's less than like 0.5 millimeter in diameter, and they made these hundreds of these on these pieces of jewelry. So it's incredible how much detail they put into that work.
The answer is aliens.
It's always aliens.
It's always aliens.
It's always fucking aliens.
Yeah, no, it is wild, the level of detail that they could reach in the Viking Age with some of their casting. That's it's insane. Isn't it Children of Ash?
Luciano.
Luciano. He has a theory that they essentially like been over on Gotland, I think it was, or maybe it was Ireland. I can't remember. That they been collecting slaves with good eyesight to train them to do this.
Makes sense.
Because he's got a really good explanation for it. He essentially says that, well, you like a population is not going to produce that many people with that good eyesight over time, so you have to like import. So it was probably like a selection of slaves coming through.
That makes perfect sense actually, because even with the slaves or people who do this type of work, they will eventually they will lose their eyesight properly, because it is such a strain on the eyes. So it's a temporary thing actually, and I think that people would know that and try to avoid doing that themselves if they could.
And just like staring at a computer all the time, by the way.
Modern
population, take note. And that reminds me, of course, there is this I don't know if it's wonderful, but there is this interesting, wonderful tale about Verlund the smith, right, who is captured by the evil Swedish king, and his Achilles tendons are cut, so he can't run away. And then he's
need him anyway.
And so he's sitting there on an island somewhere, maybe Gotland, who knows, and is making jewelry for the king, until of course he exacts revenge and all that stuff. But that's another story.
He's such a badass. He's such a badass man.
Kind of a psycho too. I mean, he takes his kids and turns their heads into ornaments. So
it's like he's the warning that like, never mess with a blacksmith. Never.
I can see.
I imagine that's not. So, you always have this typical image of a blacksmith being 6 foot plus, like huge. That's like if someone's a drawer blacksmith, that's what you're drawing. Where does that come from? Or do you need like that insane strength? Because I know a blacksmith in Rotherham that makes a bunch of stuff for my company, and he's like, I think he does like training days with different people, like teaching, probably similar thing to you do. And he said that women are by far the best at it, because it's not all about hitting it as fucking hard as you can. It's all about like the accuracy and the nuance. I think that's also my experience on classes actually, that guys will produce many more items than the women, but the women will normally produce, like on a knife class, for example, the women will normally make one workpiece and it will be perfect. That's like my experience on that, but that's a general tendency though. And I think that when it comes to the Viking Age, there are tales like, I think I posted one the other day, when there's oh my god, what's his name? There's a blacksmith, and he goes out, and my god, this should be easy because it's a Skallagrim. I think his name is Skallagrim. I think it's Egil Skallagrimsson's father. And he doesn't have an anvil, so he's on Iceland, so he doesn't or in Iceland, I don't know.
You want to say in Iceland, just to recognize that it's a country.
Yeah, exactly. So he's in Iceland, and he doesn't have an anvil, and you don't want to, it's like, it would take you 20 years to make enough iron for making one anvil properly, like a huge sword anvil, for example. So he goes out.
Kind of you see on Looney Tunes. That one.
The large ones. So he goes out in his boat, and it's also made a point out of the boat. It has 8 oars, but he rows it alone, and he anchors it up someplace outside another island, dives down into water, takes up a stone, puts it into the boat, rows into land again, carries the anvil from the shore and up to his smithy. And then he's happy, and then there's many marks in this anvil by this time the story is being told. It's still there, it says in the saga. And 4 strong men were not able to lift that anvil afterwards. So it says something about the strength of a blacksmith, because Skallagrim he had been a blacksmith for a very long time in the Viking Age.
Mhm.
And if you have to do anything, like, don't get me wrong, because everyone was fucking strong in the Viking Age. Because if you weren't, you were dead. Literally. Because if you have to wash clothing, you have to wash clothing with stones in the river in the winter.
Yeah.
And if you don't carry logs to get them to get firewood or build a house or something, your family literally dies in the winter.
Even now though, like generational farmer strength is
farmers,
fucking,
like,
it tops everything.
For 5 years, and even when I shake hands with a farmer, I'm like, holy shit, that hand is huge, right? If I meet a farmer that's been working as a farmer for all his life.
Yeah.
So that's incredible. But I have to say though, Grettir, in Grettir saga, he's twice as strong as Skallagrim would be, because 4 strong men could not lift that stone, but Grettir was able to fight off 2 wrestlers that had the strength of 2 men each, and he just dominated them completely. So, but he was an asshole though. So I don't take his moral character.
Didn't he have help from a giant when that happened? Or was that another situation where he...
That was another situation, I think.
This
was
like
at the Thing, I think.
Oh, yeah. The one that I'm thinking about, that I think he's like trapped in a ravine or something like that. And
okay, yeah.
And then he gets help from this like giant that comes out of a rock somewhere.
Yeah. No, this is a different one, but well, I just have to say, like, I know Icelandic woman, and she Sigrun is her name. She's a designer as well, Sigrun Design, and she is related to Grettir apparently, because they have historical records on their DNA and families and everything. So and she has this app, that's an Icelandic app, that you can just, who am I related to? Historical characters. And she's like, yeah, I'm related to Grettir. And I'm like, what? You're related to Grettir? Like a direct lineage from Grettir. That's awesome. But she also said that, that was a side note actually, but she also said that there's a guy in Iceland that he reenacts only Grettir saga. So he's an expert at Grettir saga, and he goes around all the places in Iceland where Grettir was moving around and do all this different reenactment stuff, which would be so cool to. If I want to guide in Iceland, I think I would go for him.
Yeah,
so.
That sounds like fun.
Go to Drangey and see him hold the fort.
Huh?
Go to Drangey and see him hold the fort up there.
Yeah. There's also so many things from that saga that's like interesting, because, for example, on the island that he lived, right, his slave was a bit sleepy, so he slept, and then he fell asleep at the fire. So the fire went out. And here's the thing, they didn't have a fire steel. So he had to go ashore. He had to swim ashore because they had been left out there with the boat. So when he swims ashore, he gets a hold of fire and everything. And it's like a major feat to actually go swimming in those waters. But it says so much about the availability of iron in the Viking Age as well, because if you don't have a fire steel, it must be rare with iron.
Mm-hmm.
And one more
something
thing
you definitely want to keep on you.
Iron, by the way. So,
It's something you definitely want to keep with you if you can.
It was very expensive. I got some pushback on this from one of my colleagues yesterday, but so take it with a grain of salt. But my opinion about how much iron would be worth for a Viking, because you can't really compare the economy today to the economy of the Viking Age. It's impossible, because it's so different. Everything is so different. we get impatient if we stand in line behind someone at a gas station and they push the button to get a coffee. We still get impatient after 30 seconds. Like, this is taking too long.
Yeah.
Well, 100 years ago, if you were a king, you would be like, servant, coffee. And then it's like 10 minutes later, you have your coffee. So we have so much luxury right now. And so there's a different economy. But in my opinion, the price of iron for a Viking would be much closer to the price of gold for us than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to go out and buy 10 kilos of gold, then you can buy 10 kilos of iron in the Viking Age. It might not be exactly like that, but it's not so far away, because it takes 6 years to make a chainmail, because you have to extract 20 kilos of iron, and then you have to forge this into steel wire, and then you have to take it around something round, and then chisel it and make it flat on one end, and then make a rivet hole, and then you have to make the rivet, and then you have to put it together and rivet one ring. Then you have to forge weld the second ring, and you do this about 30,000 times.
That's
Sounds
so
exciting,
many
man.
times. That's so many times.
I give it the short version now.
Wow, like the tribe of Dan's not doing that. They're not doing that. No chance. We'd have chainmail bikinis at best.
I'm all for that, actually.
No way. The winner's not doing it. Okay, you said you had one more thing to say about iron, and then we'll wrap up. I think we're an hour and a half in.
Yeah. Very quickly, I think oath rings like this is related to the piece of there were rings on swords, so that when you gave a ring to someone, they remained loyal to you. If you accept the ring, you swear loyalty to that person. And swords used to have rings at the end of it. So when you gave a sword to someone in the Viking Age, you were officially declaring loyalty if you received the sword. Anyway, that's also a side note from the question there. But the complexity of an Ulfbert sword is so. This was the best swords available in the Viking Age. We have found 3,500 normal swords in Norway from the Viking Age, meaning that they buried approximately 10 to 11 swords every year during the Viking Age. On average, because it probably was more towards the end of it. But 100 out of these 3,500 swords approximately are real Ulfbert swords. And Ulfbert swords have a steel quality that is almost on a par with steel that is produced today. So homogeneous steel, almost. Very, very little inclusions of impurities. So the only place that they have actually found archaeological evidence for crucible steel is actually Sri Lanka at the time of the Viking Age. So the Viking Age probably, because my logic to this is that they did have silk in Viking areas, so why wouldn't they be able to transport steel from Sri Lanka through India into the Silky Road and then into Damascus, and then from there onto Francia? And these swords
Steel is heavier than silk.
Made. Huh?
Steel is heavier than silk.
That's true, though. That's true. So I think that one of these swords would be something like, if we think of a sword as being like a Ferrari or something, I think one of these Ulfberg swords would be like a Bugatti Veyron or something. That would be like, it's the top notch of all that you can have of status symbols, I think. Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to add that, and that's completely a different level of steel production, I would say.
It was probably a female blacksmith.
Probably, yeah. She did it once, and she did it well.
She did very few, but she did it perfect. That's what it is. Perfect. Let's wrap this up. Anders, thank you very much for for taking the time to join us.
Thank you so much for letting me be on here. I hope I didn't rant too much and too much of
that's what we like.
Oh, it was great. Thank you so much.
That's what we want. Not that you need it, but give people a shout out for the Instagram so they can find you.
Yeah, my Instagram is Viking Blacksmith in one word. So feel free to follow me, and I will actually make iron on a story, so that I will make, whenever I do something related to actually making iron from scratch. It's going to take a long time, but I'm going to gather all those things into one story highlights, so that you will see.
Yeah. Wow,
Cool.
it's
In case you're
fascinating.
interested. So, yeah.
This has been one of the most fascinating episodes we've had for a long time.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was a pleasure being acquainted with you guys, and hope we see each other when I go to England. Are you both in England right now? Or?
I'm in England. Matthias is in.
I am deep in the mountains in America.
Okay, cool. I might go both places. First, I'm going to Iceland in February, probably. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah, when you're in England, we'll definitely meet up and catch up.
Cool.
But you're welcome on here anytime.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Also, if you enjoy the show, please leave us a 5-star rating and a positive review wherever you get your podcasts. And also, you've held quite a few things up to the camera. It's been quite a visual episode. So people that are only listening to this, if you want to see the visuals, the episodes are on YouTube. You can look at all three of us and look at Anders holding up different bits and pieces, which might make a little more sense. And obviously, if you can subscribe and hit the little bell icon that lets you know every time we drop a video. Matthias, what about you?
Yeah, you can always find me on Instagram just by my name, Matthias Norvig. There you go. Boom.
There we go. Perfect. Let's get out of here. Thank you very much. You're welcome back anytime. I'm sure there's so many more fascinating things.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Awesome. Take care. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Anders. Thank you, Matthias.